Hi Ian, nice to meet you. My name is Fernanda, Soldateli. I'm from 89 FM, the Radio Rock here in Brazil. I have some questions for you. Can we start?
Yeah.
So Ian, the tour that was originally planned for 2020 was postponed due to the pandemic and it's finally happened. How was this waiting period for you and for the band, and what does it mean to be finally back on the stage, especially in Brazil?
Well, we obviously, along with everybody else in the music world and movies, television, we lost a year and a half to COVID. And all the concerts we had scheduled for 2020 and 2021 were postponed. And all of them, except Brazil, we have managed now to catch up and play all those concerts that didn't happen at the time, with the exception of two countries which were not simply postponed but had to be cancelled, and those two countries are Russia and Ukraine. So that's, on a personal level, sad for me that we weren't able to go to Russia and that we weren't able to go to Ukraine. But the reasons are not COVID. The reasons are to do with two countries being at war. And so it's a sad reality that sometimes these things mean, that you simply have to give up any idea about going there. But yes, the period of time actually was about, I think, we started again in August of 2021 with a few concerts in the remainder of that year. And then 2022, we were back to playing full concert schedule again and catching up with all of the concerts that were rescheduled, plus a few more that came in along the way. So we've been very busy. And part of the reason, I guess, being busy is also because I'm at an age where I know this won't go on forever. And if I can still physically and mentally do what I do, I feel an urgency to get out there and do it, not just to sit back and say, oh, well, maybe I'll do that next year or the year after. I'm well aware that time is running out. So I am driven by the passions and sometimes the ethical obligation of showing up for work, which is, in the case of Brazil, I know some people bought their tickets back in 2019. So it's important that I honor that by coming to Brazil now, even though it's been postponed once, twice, three times, out of reasons that are nothing to do with me, just the realities of both the COVID disease and then the economy and political issues. And so it's finally we are showing up for work.
So your guys are coming to the tour with the album Rocket Float. How was the process of writing this album?
Well, the album that was released in 2022, The Zealot Gene, was drawn from elements of verses from the Holy Bible. And in the case of Rockflote, it was, I wanted to write something on the more colorful, on the world of polytheistic beliefs. And so I looked at Greek mythology and Roman mythology and Hindu mythology and decided in the end to go with Norse mythology, partly because it's the area of the world that my ancestors probably came from, and partly because it's a more colorful, basically a dead religion. And so I don't feel guilty about making a little fun, not making a joke of, but having a light-hearted look at some of those Norse gods and their personalities and characters. Whereas I don't think that would be a very proper thing to do if I had decided to look at Hindu mythology, because for 2 billion people, that is their belief system, and making anything humorous out of their beliefs would offend many of them. But Norse mythology is essentially a dead religion. There may be a few crazy heavy metal bands in Norway who still believe in all that stuff, but I don't worry about offending them.
So looking back for all the history of the band, there is something that you would do different nowadays?
I think there are lots of things in everybody's lives. There are things that we would go back and, if we were honest with ourselves, we would say, well, I would do that differently. Not maybe, that doesn't mean that you wouldn't do them at all. It just means you might do them differently. But that's what happens with age and wisdom. You can look back and say, well, I could have done that a better way. And that applies sometimes to the music, and sometimes in relationships with people, and sometimes in your relationship with culture and spirituality. There are things that I guess I would do a little differently. But I have the opportunity still to do them. So, I have a little time ahead of me to reflect and perhaps improve on what I've done before.
So it's not the first time that you guys are coming to Brazil, right?
Well, actually, our keyboard player, John O'Hara, was in Brazil last year as part of a band playing the orchestral works of John Lord, with Bruce Dickinson singing. So he was in Brazil last year for a number of shows, and I think two of the other guys have been to Brazil with me before. One of them has only just begun playing full time with Jethro Tull at the beginning of this year, so it's his first time everywhere. It was his first time wherever we were last week. I can't remember, but everywhere is his first time.
I think it's really rough for you guys. But looking back for all the history of the band, how do you guys see the evolution of the music?
Well, you can be excited about getting on an airplane and getting off an airplane and getting to sound check and going to bed at night, but there isn't any time to do anything else, because we're every day. We're not there as tourists. We're not there to have a little holiday. We're every day. It's most of the time. We won't get into bed until 1 o'clock in the morning, and most of the time we have to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning after 3 or 4 hours sleep, because we're traveling to the next city for another show. And so it's a long day, and it's going to be really tough for the crew, because at least the band get a chance to catch up on some sleep when we get to a hotel, but the crew have to go straight to work. And not only that, when they get back from this Brazil tour, the next day they start a UK tour, so they don't have any time off in between.
And lastly, I want to know, what is the next steps for the band?
Well, the next step for the band is to show up at Heathrow Airport on Sunday at around about 5 p.m. and we will be flying to Sao Paulo, and then jumping on another plane. When we get to Sao Paulo, we have to change to another flight to fly to Belo Horizonte, and so that's the next step, and that's the reality of the world we live in. We think about the next thing we have to do, and the next thing we have to do is really awful. I mean, they don't like it any more than I do. The travel is just so boring and stressful. And so sitting on an airplane for 12 hours might be somebody else's idea of fun. Maybe you're going on holiday with your family and the airplane ride is part of it. But for me, I go to work on an airplane and I don't enjoy it. I really hate it. So, it's not an enjoyable thing to have to start. But you have to do it to get there. And every day we have another flight. So it's kind of easier when I'm playing in Europe. I can jump on an airplane and be in another city in Europe in an hour and a half. But coming to Brazil, it's a 12-hour flight, plus another flight when we get there. So I'm not looking forward to that. After that, we have a UK tour straight away, two legs of a tour, with a few days off in the middle. And then in the latter part of May and June and July, I'm working on a new album. And then in September, we kind of start with the rest of the year of touring.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure having you here.
89, a Rádio Rock.